you know, kind of a thing.
Dude.
And then he's like, he doesn't feel like he should be required to follow the school rules.
How we doing?
Like,
Finding some interesting stuff?
so yeah, he's playing around, so that's an ADHD component. But then when a peer says, what the hell? And then it's like, it just like escalates. It just escalates. Manifest. It's a sign for manifest. Manifest. Just build up. Yeah, well, manifest. Manifest.
Manifest.
You sign for manifest.
That's what you do? She
I
showed
made that
me.
up. I don't know. I'm
She made it up. Create.
Manifest. I just say worse.
But stop using big words, okay?
I disagree. I say
We don't have
manifest.
time for them. We don't have time for them.
Manifest. It shows itself.
Well,
Yeah, see,
it's create.
well, no, but it adds on. It adds on.
She said
Your
it shows.
problem.
She said it. She shows itself, and she said, "Create." We need. We need
Keep
to
going.
look up that
Look up the definition.
I'm thinking
word. We don't know it.
You have the blackberry.
I thought it meant. You know. Well,
it grows,
there's-
well, it expands. It's like if fuel, adding fire to the fuel.
Yeah.
Makes more of a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Makes more of a problem.
Yes.
It manifests.
Manifest.
Behavior.
Not
Probably like
that.
manifest
Thank
cause.
There's.
Causing into.
Yeah.
Manifested into it. Causes to go into that.
Yes. Yes. That's the idea. That's the idea.
So how would you find that then?
Manifest. Because this causes that.
Leads to.
There you go.
No, I'm too lazy for that. Too lazy.
That's what I started with. It's easy if you don't make mistakes.
But then if a person doesn't know what
All
that
right, I
word
noticed
means, then
that
you
our pizza is up. What we can do is take a 45-minute break here. Feel free to take your pizza back and keep talking. But, we'll get back together at 1 o'clock. We'll do some more looking at this, and then we're going to start talking about what are we finding, what are you seeing in this data.
I will let
I'll
them
interpret till they come if they're not here.
She'll come from Kankakee. Can't be that far.
So go grab some pizza, people.
You want pizza now? Okay.
I don't know. That's
Cookies are here.
behavior.
And they're hot, probably.
I was asking.
Yeah, they just made it for us.
Please feel free to get up, get yourself a cookie, come back, another couple of minutes, and we'll start processing.
He's going to use them for rewards. Who has the right answer to give you a cookie?
Okay. So the target behavior, attention-seeking behavior. I know. I'm wearing my coat.
Rick, can I ask for your assistance? After we decide upon which of the behaviors is the focus of the target behavior, what's the next step we're supposed to be doing here?
We're supposed to be looking to see if we can identify from the data sources antecedents, consequences, and what you think the function is.
Okay. Well, that's our next step. Thank you.
I noticed a lot of times the teacher just says if you confront him or if you correct him, he say,
So the answer would be teacher correction. Okay.
but it's also attention seeking too because he's getting attention from the teacher. Anything he feels is unfair. If the teacher is correcting him, that's unfair. If he's wrong, he shouldn't be wrong.
Alright, I got you two. I thought one was peanut butter, but I don't know if it's butterscotch or not.
Are those hot?
Yeah, they're hot.
Ah. Okay. Hey,
Can you bring that chocolate chip one?
you want one?
Just in case.
Well, when you leave, they'll be in the forest. Attention seeking, Do you agree, Carrie,
What?
that the antecedent is teacher correction, function is attention, right? So then, what was the next thing you wanted us to do? We need a paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Consequences of what happened. What happens? What are consequences now? What happens when he? So now,
People think I'm a pig.
now we're talking about consequences. What happens
that
when teacher corrects him? What? Thank you. Thank you.
8 points anyway. Okay, so
You sure?
So,
So are you sure?
they're hot. They're hot now.
That's convincing.
So we're talking about consequences that happen after teacher correction. What is consequences?
He's kicked out.
it's what he gets. It's what he gets out of the behavior. Not what the end result is. That's what a lot of people get confused about. And I remember you explaining this to me so many times, Steve. You're like, it's what he gets out
In our preschool too.
The consequence.
Good.
Yeah. See, I've been listening.
Kicked out is the intervention. What happens after he's kicked out? What happens? He misses what?
Well, it's social time. I mean, he misses the social time.
Okay. What else is he missing?
The attention from
Okay. Teacher attention, maybe.
All of 2
the
pages.
time to act up.
We're talking about that most parents and some teachers think about the intervention means the same as consequence. But really, intervention, when you kick him out, that is intervention. Then what happens when you kick him out? What happens? Then not have class. He sits where, right?
No attention from the teacher.
Attention. So many things happen as consequence, right? So I see that sign is just so different. I see consequence. I see different signs for that. You know what I mean? What are you saying? That's why I think. That's why I think most people think of as the same. Yeah, I think so.
I do know that in
because
our
the
elementary
first thing they want to do is take away something.
When they were part of our
Right? They want to be mean.
they've separated off
And
for the
because,
past 3 years.
because in the past that works.
They had to
Some
start
kids it works
You
fine.
get scared and then they found listen.
Right. Like we did that, but not these kids. The kids, that's not working for them.
That's
So.
entitlement.
Well, some, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you can stay in your groups, but I want you now to, we're going to actually have you in your groups in a few minutes, think about a behavior intervention plan. What I want you to do right now is, as you began to look through this data, what did you see as potential functions of the behavior? Were there any antecedents or consequences that you saw that were of special note? Anything that you thought that might be critical to identify as far as thinking about developing a behavior intervention plan for this young man?
Looking at here is the style, the instructional style of the teacher was mostly a whole group lecture.
Which teacher? In the one for the beast?
Language arts.
Okay.
And, so to me, if you're looking at somebody with ADHD, and I can't even imagine a more boring
Okay.
style of, but the style of presenting them. You've got
All right.
somebody who's mostly they're looking at the text, that's all they have checked off. Well,
Okay.
I would think that's not going to help.
Right. So at least that raised an eyebrow for you, the fact that, okay, if I've got a student who, and again, this is part of that issue of knowing, when I know that children have various disorders or whatever, at least gives me a heads up that there might be some things that are more significantly important for some kids than others. So the fact that all of a sudden I've got a child for whom attending and staying focused on one thing is going to be difficult, and I've got a teacher who's trying to ask the student to do just that. That's going to be a potential problem, all right? May or may not be, but at least it's a potential problem. Okay, what else do people see? Yes?
In section 3 on the classroom sketch, no students and no classroom-wide VPB, verbal praise for social behavior.
Okay. So no praise for social behavior. Now, if you, by chance, have ever done something like this in classrooms, one of the things you will find is that teachers rarely reinforce or praise for behavior. Teachers praise for academics. They reprimand for behavior. The two things you don't see a lot. Many teachers don't even know how to give an academic correction. It's kind of like I ask a question, you get it wrong, they kind of go, what do you think? All right? It's like we don't even know how to say, no, that was wrong, or how to prompt the student to get to a correct answer. We just kind of go, damn, okay, let's ask somebody else. I was really hoping they get it right. So oftentimes those blocks are pretty, so at least for social behavior, there's not a lot of energy going in, at least for praising this kid. Nobody's noticing when he's doing the right thing. All right, so that may be something that you've got to put into consideration. This is something this teacher's not, at least this teacher is not naturally catching. Might that be an important thing to know as you develop a plan? Sure.
And it might be interesting to compare the teachers that he does a good job with to see how much social praise there is in those classrooms, right, as opposed to the ones where he's not having.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you guys. Oftentimes I find this is one of the things where you've got to just start saying, okay, enough data. Usually a data source to me just generates more damn questions. Right? Well, now I want to know this, and then I want to know that. But maybe that's just the researcher in me. I don't know. But it's kind of like I said, ooh, there's another question you could answer. And they go, no, I don't need to answer all these questions necessarily to get to the answer to what I need to do here. But okay, so I definitely may want to see is there a difference here, because there certainly seems to be a difference in his behavior. Okay? What else are people noticing?
The write-ups of both of the teachers. Wow. One really talks about him as a total behavior problem. He asks it whenever he's asked to do anything, and the other teacher's like, well, I give him room to do this, and just the write-ups. It was interesting that there was about the same child.
Okay. Now, how might that be helpful if you had these interviews? What do you think the teachers would do? And I'm not necessarily saying that people do this, but if this were a team process, like it's supposed to be, and we shared this information, do you think it would be lost on the team, the difference in the nature of these responses? You think it'd be lost? You think that? Yeah, no, I think the teacher would all of a sudden like, whoa, we've got some very different perceptions of this kid.
The one teacher even comments like, well, he has a crush on that teacher or something. So.
Oh yeah, and oftentimes, how many times have you found a teacher who's like, I don't hear a thing that you're saying when I'm talking to you? It's like, no. But then you come back. I was actually at school not too long, actually at the beginning of the school year, I guess. And the librarian of the school was just so negative. Everything we were talking about, she was so negative. And I kind of pretty much convinced myself, I'm not going to like this woman. I'm working with a school, but I just don't think that she and I are going to get along too well. I walk in the next time, she goes, I didn't agree with what you said, but I tried a couple of the things that you talked about, and I'm really happy it's starting to work. And I'm like, damn. I was really kind of set to not like you, but because she was just so, and I can't hear a thing. You're wrong, everything's wrong. This is, but some people are just that way. I can't agree with you. Again, we can't forget that most of the time when somebody walks into a teacher's room and is collecting data, they are evaluating the teacher. So teachers are going to look at this as evaluation. This is not teacher evaluation. I think one of those pieces that the administrator has to say, I think we have to give teachers permission to say, there isn't a person in this room that can walk into a class of 25 or 30 kids and have all the skills, knowledge, and ability to meet each and every one of those kids' needs and bring them to meet or exceed state guidelines without a lot of help and support. And that in teaching, I don't care who you are, you watch a teacher for 20 minutes. If you can't find 2 things they did well and 2 things they need help with, you didn't know how to watch. It is that complex of a task. And I think to a certain extent, we've got to give teachers permission to say, you're not going to do it all right, and you're not going to do it all right with some kids. Some kids are going to be more difficult for you to work with than others. I know personally, I did not like working with kids who were suicidal. I just felt trapped by them. I had to attend to their behavior, and the minute I attended to their behavior, I was going to likely predict that they're going to do it again. And I just felt like, damn it, I don't know what to do with this kid. Give me the homicidal kid. That's the one I want to work with, okay? I can understand that, but there are differences there, and I think we've got to give teachers permission that you don't have to know it all, and you don't have to be doing everything right.
Well, one of the things too I remind teachers is that the help that you're giving the child just may not be obvious to you this school year. Definitely it wasn't just as valuable, and your anticipations that they will progress at the rates of the other students is what's off, because every student learns by gathering information on top of information they know, and you're doing what you should do. It's frustrating not to see the outcome.
I think the other thing that just from the standpoint of a functional assessment, part of what we're saying is that this behavior works for this kid. Part of what makes it work is that teachers, at least at times, respond in ways that allow this behavior to continue to be successful. Nobody's going to change a behavior that's successful. So almost by definition, there's going to be a certain aspect of the fact that the context has to change. The context currently supports the behavior. We've got to make a context not so supportive of the behavior. Now, I'd like to say the easiest piece to change is the teacher. It's not, because we simply don't talk to teachers about changing. But that's the person we're paying. That's the person who volunteered to come in. That's the person who, quite frankly, we ought to be able to just sit down and say, here's what's going on, and when you respond this way, it's not that you're a bad teacher, but that response makes this behavior successful. We're going to try to do something that makes it different. Now, what does that require the teacher to do? Change their behavior. Do teachers want to change their behavior? No. And oftentimes when teachers will tell me about how difficult it is, I'll say, this is as close as you're ever going to get to what you're expecting the student to do. You're expecting the student to respond differently under a set situation. What I'm asking you to do is to respond differently under a set situation. It is difficult. It's difficult for you. It's difficult for the kids.
Some teachers will say, guess who I got stuck with this year?
Oh, absolutely.
They don't change their instructional level. They teach the way they taught 30 years ago, and they teach from the same book, the same lesson, and they don't want to change it, and they don't want those kind of kids that have more than one problem or two problem, multi-handicapped or whatever. They want to change everything else but themselves.
Most of us want to change everything else but ourselves. Not many of us are going, you know what, I really want to change everything I'm doing. I'm generally pretty comfortable with who I am, right? I think one of the challenges that we have in schools is the fact that, quite frankly, I think a lot of teachers who are having the most difficulty are ones who know I desperately have to change and just don't know how to do it. And there's not a lot of support for doing it. I mean, I think one of the bigger challenges is once we identify the kinds of changes that need to be made, I don't have as big a problem with teachers realizing that I need to do that. Where I had the problem is, where do we muster the resources to support the change? Because just like kids, when staff need to change their behavior, they need feedback on the process, and we don't have any real good way to give teachers feedback on the process.
And especially like Steve was saying, if you don't see those changes immediately, it's not gonna be. I mean, it's something that takes a long time.
Right.
So I think that they get bogged down, like, well, this isn't working.
Yeah. Or they slip back into the same schema they've always used. Whatever's going on, and that's just the most comfortable thing for me to do. And so to shift that becomes very, very difficult. But, hopefully we're going to, I think that's part of this is that at least we're at the point now of beginning to identify some of these structures. I think schools that are picking up like PBIS and some of those things are beginning to see structures that they can put in place to actually help facilitate that process of change. If you don't have anything else, it's just left to the teacher. I think that's a real hard thing because teachers are already pretty overworked.
I think if you look at the science teacher's interview, he's correct. He's looking through very, very negative glasses, but I mean, he's correct. If you say negative things to the student, you give him negative feedback, he's going to give you negative feedback. If you ask him to do things that are very hard for him, he's going to act out. I think the science teacher is right. However, the other teacher is doing it, so those things don't have to happen.
Right.
But, he understands.
Yeah, he's not lying. He's being honest, and and from his standpoint, this is what's going on. The kid should know better. All this kind of stuff. He's behaving the way he is. Right?
I think it's really hard to get teachers to recognize how little positive reinforcement they're giving kids, and or to believe that positive reinforcement. I remember I worked in McHenry County Proceedum for a couple of years with a teacher in an ED class, solely because she was fantastic at creating an atmosphere loaded with positive reinforcement, and she got the most incredible results that I wished I could have videotaped her and just used that tape to show teachers what is possible. Because I'd never seen a teacher get the kind of results that she was getting. But it's real hard to convince people it's possible. I didn't believe it until I saw it.
Yeah. And again, that's a big reason to get oftentimes I will ask a teacher to go in and to take data in another classroom because I want that teacher to see a teacher engaging in behavior different than their own. Oftentimes the more positive. We did a program, and I think I talked about this before, where we did peer triad, where we had teachers who would identify 2 colleagues. And we did this as part of a support process in terms of that we know drive-by in-services don't work. You get all excited, but then you go back to the building and you hit that brick wall called a school. And so what we did was basically identified 3 teachers that would self-select that they're colleagues. And this week, Lori would be the observing, the host teacher. Kathy's going to go in and spend 20 minutes in her classroom, observe, and give her feedback on 2 things she's doing well, 2 things she could improve upon. Later on, Michelle's going to go into her classroom, do the same thing. Next week, Michelle's the host teacher. The 2 of you are going to go in. Next week, Kathy's the host teacher. So in 3 weeks, you would get feedback twice, you would give feedback twice. We had significant changes in math and reading scores, all kinds of, we had some really good results from this. We replicated it a couple of times. It is not the feedback you got that changed teachers' behavior. Teachers report it is the feedback they gave that changed their behavior. It's when I'm in there and all of a sudden I'm going, damn, sarcasm's not a good thing. That got me to stop using sarcasm. It's when I saw that I made you a victim and then all the kids had to support the victim against me as the teacher that I realized this is not a good system. But I can't see it myself. But boy, I could see it really easily in another teacher. But it begins to impact my behavior. And so when you trying to get teachers to go in and observe has been a very, very powerful way to not only get teachers on board, but to actually model, in some cases to get them to see somebody modeling the behavior you actually want them to do. This kid, one of the things that we know about this young man is he's oppositional he's got a diagnosis of oppositional defiant disorder, right? What would I anticipate with a kid like this if I came at him negatively? Okay, I might anticipate. Now, what's interesting is the part of the triad of kids I used to create this is a true kid with really significant oppositional defiant disorder. When we went to the high school for the transition meeting, one of the things I talked about was the fact, I said, maybe it would be good if the teachers that are going to work with this kid and that are in that kind of pod of the school are just aware that this is probably not a kid who, when you see him doing something wrong, you want to just kind of take up short and confront him. We're not going to let him get by with stuff, but as you approach him, you're going to have to approach him in a much more calm, caring manner. And the school psychologist looked at me and said, well, that's just not reasonable. I said, what? It's not reasonable that we would talk to the teachers about that. And I just about lost it. And I don't do that very often, but I said, what's not reasonable is that we even have to bring it up that we should have to talk to teachers to do this. That's what's not reasonable. That this would even be something that we would have to discuss as a potential, as part of a plan, makes me crazy. The fact that we couldn't do it, now whether the teachers respond is a whole other thing, but can we at least talk to them about it, but you hit that in schools. All right, what else are you seeing with this kid? Yeah.
Well, we're noticing in a variety of different ways he's attention seeking and he gets attention in his classes. The classroom sketch, he only got negative attention. And then...
Is negative attention okay?
Negative attention.
Yeah. Is that all right?
For him,
You know, it's not changing his behavior, but hell, you know, it's attention's attention, right?
And then the social studies teacher, in her narrative, she is giving him attention. When she notices the problem, she'll go over to him. She gave him attention in a variety of ways, and then in her feedback, she wasn't seeing the same problem. So it doesn't seem like negative attention works, but she's seeking attention.
Okay.
So the hypothesis might be
All right. So the behavior is there. Now the question becomes, how does one respond to that behavior? I mean, obviously there's going to be some attention at some point because somebody's got to attend to it. But what do you do when it happens? All right. What else are people seeing? Yeah.
A lot of the teachers have a preconceived idea about him before he even walks into class. We were talking about that. It's like if you go into the situation thinking it's going to be bad, your mind is going to make it bad, even if it's not really a disaster. You know, where the social studies teacher is very positive, she meets him before he even comes into class, kind of boosts him to have a good day, and then they have a better result.
Okay. Based on the discussions in your group, what's the function of Matthew's behavior? Attention? Is it just a general attention? He doesn't care from who?
Yeah, or peer and teacher.
Okay, so both. All right, so it could be either one. All right?
We were saying sometimes the teacher attention could even lead to peer attention. Like if he gets a reprimand, then his peers laugh and things like that. So if he knows that the teacher's going to reprimand him, that's how he's getting the peer attention. It could be.
All right. And again, remembering that as teachers and educators, we're supposed to bring all of our knowledge to bear on an issue. I've got basically a kid entering the middle school years, right? Where do adults fit into this pattern of how valuable you are? All right, it starts diminishing, right? And in fact, if I can tie a tail on a bell on your tail as an adult, I could be somebody cool, couldn't I? If I can show I don't really care what you think, who the hell are you? Right? My peers are going to go, whoa, wow. Right? So that could, you're right, it could be a way that even doing that, while it seems that the defiance results in some sort of peer support. A question to ask anyhow. Yeah?
When I read this, it doesn't even seem like that happens a lot, because like on the one chart that shows there was twice that he volunteered, and he got nothing back from the teacher. So he finally volunteers for something, and then both of them just go unacknowledged. And then the consequences for target behavior, the non-compliance on all the consequences that came from the teacher was nothing. So again, he isn't going along with what's requested, and he's getting nothing. And when he doesn't get anything, he gets a little something from the peers twice. And the same way with the disruptive behavior, he gets more, he gets almost an equal amount of laughter from peers and being ignored by the teacher. So then I think, when I think of kids who have this behavior, I mean, it could be a lot more consistent.
Okay. Does it have to be?
To be a problem?
To be the function. How often do I have to, I mean, this goes down to schedules of reinforcement, right? If we're going to use a good applied behavior analysis model, how thin can the reinforcement be and still maintain a behavior? Depends on the kid, right? It could be pretty thin. I think that's one of the challenges as we, I mean, if you look at the beginning of where FBAs came from, it really was initially developed for kids with much more cognitively impaired kids with more, that couldn't sit down and talk to us about what was going on and this kind of stuff. And we've extrapolated it out to kids with very mild disabilities. The problem with kids with very mild disabilities is that what happened immediately before isn't nearly as predictive of what I do as it is if I've got a kid whose IQ is 50. I can sustain, I can be pissed at you from something you did 3 weeks ago and hold it in my head, and I'm waiting for my time to get back at you. Now the likelihood that I can put these two things into connection with one another is much more difficult. So we're really pushing the science here as we apply this to kids with more mild disabilities. And I think one of the things that we have to realize is that these kids in many cases can work with very thin schedules of reinforcement. which makes it difficult sometimes to really delineate the function of the behavior. And one of the things I like about this data set is that you can actually come up with 2 or 3 really good, meaningful functions for the behavior out of this data set. My experience is that that's not unusual. With a lot of cases, I can come up with 2 or 3, and in some cases, the behavior may serve more than one function. Can a behavior serve more than one function? Sure. All right, and I may have to take that into consideration when I develop my behavior plan.
Well, we talked about that and how targeted some other things that we needed more data on, at least so that when we review the bit, you can look at that, because, you know, you read one report or one interview and you think it's this way, and then you read the other one, and then you try to find things that are the same,
right,
or, you know, that could work for either.
So what were some of the questions that you found yourself saying, I need more information?
Well, when we decided on attention, we were deciding, is it peer attention or the teacher attention? Because for the teacher that is accommodating him already, you know, she's giving him the only positive teacher attention. You know, so is it that teacher? Is it his peers within there? Is it the way the classroom is set up?
Okay.
And then from some of the charts, you know, he gets a few like laughs and giggles. So it's, you know, it's situational. You have to go in and make up, you know, the same questions that you want answered in each of the